Hey everyone, welcome back to The Unseen Wisdom, your shortcut to being well-informed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to keep those deep dives coming.
You bet.
So today we're going deep into the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo, or DRC.
Right.
It's a complicated situation, but we're going to break it down for you using some news coverage we found.
Absolutely. There are a lot of different perspectives to consider here. We've got reports from the front lines, the impact on peacekeepers and their families, and the international community's response.
Okay, so first up, the M23 rebel group.
Right.
These guys have been a problem for years, but now they're saying they've taken control of Goma, a major city in the eastern DRC.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Goma is strategically important, and the reports coming out of there are pretty scary. Lots of gunfire and a lot of fear.
And what's the Congolese government saying about all this?
Well, they're insisting that they still control key parts of the city. But even if that's true, having M23 on the outskirts is causing chaos.
I bet. And then there's the UN Security Council. They've condemned what they're calling the involvement of external forces, which basically means they think someone else is backing the M23.
It does.
Do they have any idea who that might be?
Well, all fingers are pointing at Rwanda.
Rwanda? Really?
Yeah, and it makes sense when you look at the history between Rwanda and the DRC. It's a long and complicated story going back decades.
I can imagine. But if Rwanda is involved, what's their motivation?
They're officially denying any involvement with the M23.
Of course.
Their official line is that they're focused on countering a different group called the FDLR.
Okay, who are the FDLR?
So the FDLR is based in the DRC, and it's made up of people who were involved in the Rwandan genocide back in the 90s.
Oh, wow, that's heavy.
Yeah, so Rwanda claims that the FDLR poses a threat to their national security, and they're saying that their actions in the DRC are all about countering that threat.
So basically, Rwanda's saying we're acting in self-defense.
Exactly. But the DRC sees it very differently. They feel like their sovereignty is being violated.
Right, classic geopolitical standoff.
You got it. And it highlights the deep tensions that have been simmering in this region for years. Rwanda is looking at this through the lens of their own traumatic history.
Makes sense.
And the DRC is fiercely protective of their territory and resources.
So where does all of this leave us? I mean, could this escalate into a full-blown regional war? Because the UN seems pretty worried.
The potential for a wider conflict is a real concern, and it's something the international community is trying to prevent. But tragically, we're already seeing the consequences of this conflict.
You're talking about the South African peacekeepers?
Yeah.
The ones who were killed in the fighting?
Right. They were part of a UN mission in the DRC, and they got caught in the crossfire.
I was reading about Private Derek Malu.
Heartbreaking story.
Absolutely heartbreaking. He was killed in action, and his family is still waiting for answers, waiting for closure. It's a stark reminder of the human cost of this conflict.
It is. And it's not just Private Malu either. There have been reports of other South African soldiers killed in the DRC, which just adds to the grief and the sense of urgency.
I can't even imagine what those families are going through.
Yeah.
Their loved ones are out there putting their lives on the line.
And for what? It's a question a lot of people are asking. It's a tough spot for South Africa. They've always tried to be peacemakers in the Great Lakes region, but when you start losing soldiers,
Yeah.
well, it makes you wonder if it's worth it.
Right, and you see that sentiment growing in South Africa.
Absolutely.
There's a group there, the Tibet Unemployment and Business Forum, and they're planning protests, demanding that their soldiers be brought home from the DRC.
Makes sense. This isn't some far-off political game for them. This is about their sons and brothers, you know?
Their fathers, their husbands.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
real. And it raises a really tough question. When does peacekeeping become too risky? Too costly?
Right. When do you say enough is enough? And it's not just the families asking that question. It's being asked in government, too. President Ramaphosa of South Africa has actually been talking directly with President Kagame of Rwanda.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're trying to leverage their history, their relationship, to find some kind of peaceful solution.
That's a good idea.
It is, but from what we're seeing on the ground, it's not that easy.
Oh, no, not at all. The situation is incredibly volatile. I mean, the UN has called for a ceasefire and for peace talks to resume.
Right.
But the M23 rebels don't seem too interested.
Shocking.
And, you know, the DRC's representative at the UN, well, he didn't hold back. He basically said the Security Council needs to stop with the empty words and actually do something.
So what can they do? What kind of concrete action can the international community take to stop this from escalating?
Well, there's the whole issue of the resources the M23 has.
Oh, right.
South Africa has raised concerns about their equipment, where they're getting it. They think some of it might be coming from violations of UN sanctions.
Oh, so there could be a whole other network supporting them.
It's possible, and if that's the case, it needs to be investigated. But even setting that aside, the situation for the UN peacekeeping mission on the ground, it's pretty bad. They've pulled out non-essential staff, and most of the troops are stuck at their bases. They can't really do much.
So it's basically a siege situation.
Pretty much. And it's making people nervous. There are calls for more support, more troops, for both the UN mission, MONUSCO.
I've heard of them.
And for the Southern African Development Community Mission, SAMI, DRC.
Okay, but is sending more troops the answer? I mean, will that really solve anything?
That's the big question, isn't it? It feels like this needs a more complex solution, something that gets at the root of the problem.
Well, didn't you mention that there's a planned East African Community Summit coming up?
Oh, right. Yeah, both President Tshisekedi of the DRC and President Kagame of Rwanda are supposed to be there.
So maybe that's a chance for a breakthrough.
It could be. It's at least a chance for them to talk, to try and de-escalate things face to face. Whether it'll actually lead to anything, well, we'll have to wait and see.
I guess we'll see if they actually take this opportunity, or if it's just another missed chance in a long line of failed peace efforts.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that this isn't just some abstract political drama playing out on the world stage.
Right.
This is real life with real consequences. You've got those protests in South Africa, families demanding their loved ones be brought home. They're worried, and they have every right to be.
I mean, when you see what happened to Private Malu, those deaths, it makes you question the whole point of being involved in such a dangerous, messy situation.
It's a balancing act, isn't it? You want to help, maybe peacemaker, but you also have to protect your own people.
So what now? What's the way forward in all of this?
Honestly, it's hard to say for sure, but one thing's clear. We need a peaceful solution, and we need it now. People's lives are at stake. The stability of the whole region is at stake.
It's a lot to think about. And honestly, it's a little scary. This whole situation, it keeps me up at night.
It really makes you think about how fragile peace can be in that part of the world.
Yeah.
You know, so many times they've tried to make peace.
Right.
But they never really seem to solve those deep-rooted problems.
So it's like they just keep going around in circles.
Kind of, yeah. One step forward, two steps back. It's disheartening.
It is. It really is. But even with all this turmoil, all this violence, is there any hope, any chance for things to get better?
Well, at least people are still talking. I mean, that's something, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
And that upcoming East African Community Summit, that's a good sign.
You think so?
Well, it's a chance for dialogue, a chance for these leaders to actually sit down together and maybe, hopefully, de-escalate things.
Okay, but what about the international community? What can they do to help?
Well, the UN Security Council needs to step up. It's not enough to just condemn the violence, you know? They need to take real action, actually do something. Maybe strengthen sanctions or give more support to the peacekeeping mission.
Could they actually intervene? Like send in troops to protect civilians?
Maybe. It's a tough call, but it's something to think about.
So it sounds like we need a multi-pronged approach, something that tackles both the immediate crisis and the long-term issues.
Exactly. And it needs to be a coordinated effort involving everyone. Regional players, international organizations, everyone. There's no quick fix here, but they need to stay committed to peace, to stability.
And we'll definitely be keeping an eye on things, following the situation closely, and bringing you updates as they happen.
Absolutely.
But in the meantime, we want to leave you with something to think about. What do you think the international community's role should be in situations like this?
Good question.
And what about us? What responsibility do we have as individuals to stay informed, to engage with these complex issues?
That's a big one.
It is. And that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to The Unseen Wisdom for more deep dives into the news that matters.